Most of Western Europe is a peninsula surrounded by the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans, the North Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. The Western European peninsula is composed of the countries Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Liechtenstein, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. The United Kingdom, Ireland, and Iceland are also Western European countries, even though they are separate from the peninsula's landmass. Greece is also part of Western Europe, even though it lies at the tip of the Balkan Peninsula. Greece has more than 2,000 islands, and it's bordered by the Ionian Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Aegean Sea. Its capital city is Athens. Athens is considered the birthplace of Western civilization. Standing watch over Athens is the Acropolis. Pericles, a statesman in ancient Athens, was instructed by an oracle to transform the Acropolis into a city of temples. Oracles were priestesses believed to communicate the wishes of the Greek gods. The Acropolis became a showcase of colossal gilded buildings and huge bronze and marble statues. Now in ruins, the grandeur of these structures is still awe-inspiring. At the top of the Acropolis is the Parthenon. Completed in 432 BC, it is the largest Doric temple in Greece. Except for its wooden roof, it was built entirely of marble. Dedicated to the goddess Athena, the Parthenon housed a giant statue of her. Though the contributions of ancient Greece are well known, Athens remains on the world stage. As the capital of Greece and a center of Western European culture, Athens hosted the 2004 Olympic Games. The Netherlands, also known as Holland, is located in northwestern Europe. It is bordered by the North Sea to the north and west, Germany to the east, and Belgium to the south. The 16 million people who live in the Netherlands speak Dutch and Frisian. Belgium is bordered by Luxembourg to the southeast and France to the west and southwest. Belgium is one of the smallest countries in Europe, just about the size of the state of Maryland. Once part of the Netherlands, Belgium won its independence in 1830. Now it is one of Europe's most urbanized and densely populated nations. Belgium is home to over 10 million people who speak primarily Dutch and French. Twice the area of New Jersey, the Netherlands has 280 miles of coastline. This coastal expanse and its major rivers, including the Rhine, encouraged international trade and exploration throughout Dutch history. The city of Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands. In addition to being a major port and a center of the diamond cutting industry, Amsterdam is an artistic and historic center of Europe. Ethnically diverse, Amsterdam is home to more than 40 canals, which are flanked by streets and crossed by 400 bridges. Residents, visitors, and tourists alike travel its waterways in salon boats. Many old and picturesque houses line the canals. This one, on the Prinsengracht, is now a museum. But it was once the home of Anne Frank and her family. As Jews, the Franks hid inside during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands during World War II. The family stayed in a secret annex from 1942 until August 4th, 1944, when the Nazis discovered them. Anne Frank's diary of her family's 2 years of hiding is a classic of literature. most of the city's Jewish residents disappeared into Nazi concentration camps. Amsterdam is well known for political and social activism. So the city that is more than 700 years old is a living museum and a thriving modern metropolis.
Spain and Portugal make up the Iberian Peninsula, the region in the extreme southwest of Europe. Slightly more than twice the area of Oregon, Spain is bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the northwest and the Bay of Biscay to the north, France to the northeast, Gibraltar to the south, the Mediterranean Sea to the south and southeast, and Portugal on the west. The Canary Islands, the Balearic Islands, and Ceuta and Melilla also are part of Spain. Spain's capital, Madrid, is located in the center of the country, which is home to more than 40 million people. Portugal is just smaller than the state of Indiana. The country is home to over 10 million people, most of whom speak Portuguese. Lisbon, Portugal's capital, is located on the westernmost point of continental Europe. Lisbon is a beautiful natural harbor. The city has a history extending back 2,000 years. During the 15th and 16th centuries, Portugal experienced a golden era of sea exploration, building Europe's first maritime empire by establishing colonies around the world. Lisbon was transformed into the opulent capital of a vast global empire. In 1755, a massive earthquake reduced the city to rubble. But some of its castles and former splendor are visible today. Every June, the streets of Lisbon burst alive with feasts in honor of popular saints. The Feast of St. Anthony, the patron saint of lovers, is a religious but fun-filled celebration. The night before the feast, celebrants enjoy a costume parade. Multicolored paper lanterns, streamers, and banners line the parade route. Bonfires glow and food is abundant. Grilled sardines are part of a popular meal. On the day of the feast, many couples marry. Traditionally, Town Hall sponsors the weddings of poor couples and provides a reception for them. Lisbon is a city that easily mixes past and present. So today, the heart of Portugal is one of Europe's most fascinating cities. Switzerland is located in Central Europe. It is bordered by France to the west, Germany to the north, Austria and Liechtenstein to the east, and Italy to the south. Switzerland is a small country, just a little larger than the state of West Virginia. Its physical geography is dominated by the Alps and Jura Mountains. Bern, the capital, is located in the west central region. The primary language in Bern is German, but most Swiss people speak other languages, including French, Italian, and English. They also speak the language of chocolate. Chocolate starts with the beans of the cacao tree. South American Indians first used the beans to make a bitter drink. Conquering Spaniards tried the drink, sweetened it with cinnamon and vanilla, and introduced it to Europe. François-Louis Callier opened a chocolate factory in Switzerland in 1819 and produced the first bar of chocolate. His factory is still in use today. In 1876, Daniel Peter, a Swiss candle maker and entrepreneur, and baby food manufacturer Henri Nestlé, invented milk chocolate, used today in most candy bars. The Swiss eat more chocolate per person than anyone else in the world. On average, 27 pounds a year. But the Swiss also export their chocolate to the rest of the world, making it an important part of their economy, in addition to its important place in Swiss history.
Although France is less than twice the size of Colorado, it is one of the largest countries in Western Europe. It is bordered by Spain, Switzerland, Italy, Germany, and Belgium. The Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, and the English Channel are also on the French border. For more than 300 years, the power of the French king was absolute. This meant that he had the power to do anything. By the summer of 1789, the French people were ready for change. The people demanded equal rights and more power to govern themselves. But when the king refused to grant equal rights to all French people, he and his family were imprisoned in their own palace, and a representative government made up of French citizens called the National Constituent Assembly began running the country in his place. Without a king, multiple governments and factions were able to seize power. One of the people who rose to power during these turbulent times was a man named Napoleon Bonaparte.
Nous sommes ici.
Napoleon fought many battles for the new French government and was able to add more than 23,813 square kilometers to French territory in only 1 year. He finally returned to lead the French people in a revolt against their new government on September 4th, 1797, and became leader of France on November 9th, 1799. As leader, Napoleon kept Paris the center of France's government. He also created the Bank of France and the Napoleonic Code, the first modern set of laws in France made without a king. Napoleon wanted to rule all of Europe and beyond. His first step was to make himself Emperor of France on December 2nd, 1804. Next, he would lead an army of 600,000 soldiers into Eastern Europe and destroy anyone who stood in his way. In June 1812, the army started marching toward Russia. The French emperor planned to add Russia to his empire. But the winter months were harsh in Russia, and the Russians set fire to Moscow, Russia's capital, so that Napoleon would have nothing to conquer. With no protection from the cold, and nothing for the soldiers to eat, Napoleon's troops were forced to retreat back to France. The distance from Moscow to France was so great that only 10,000 out of Napoleon's 600,000 soldiers survived. The survivors had become so weak that they could not defend France from his powerful enemies. Great Britain, Prussia, Sweden, and Austria were able to invade Paris on March 31st, 1814. The leaders of these countries forced Napoleon to give up the French throne. They sent him to the tiny island of Elba in the Mediterranean Sea forever. Napoleon was beaten, but not defeated. He and his followers escaped from Elba and returned to France on March 20th, 1815. In a matter of months, he rebuilt the French army and became an emperor for the second time. But the leaders of Great Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria did not want to give Napoleon another chance to conquer Europe. These four nations joined forces, and in June 1815, they beat Napoleon's army at Waterloo in the modern-day country of Belgium. In his second time on the throne of France, Napoleon only ruled for 100 days. On June 22, 1815, the Allies forced Napoleon to give up the French throne for good and sent him to the island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean for the rest of his life. The French Revolution enabled Napoleon to hold more power than anyone else living in the 18th and 19th centuries. He reformed French law and built an empire. But instead of spreading the revolution's message of liberty and equality, he tried to control the destinies of other countries and rule their people. For that, his life ended in exile.
The Federal Republic of Germany is in the center of Europe and is bordered by the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Switzerland, Austria, the Czech Republic, Poland, Denmark, the Baltic Sea, and the North Sea. Although Germany is slightly smaller than the state of Montana, it has a larger economy and more people than any other nation in the European Union. Berlin is the capital city of Germany. Today, it's a major cultural center and a modern industrialized city. But less than 2 decades ago, Berlin and the entire country were divided between East and West. After its defeat at the end of World War II in 1945, Germany was split into East and West Germany. The United States, the United Kingdom, and France controlled West Germany. The communist forces of the Soviet Union controlled East Germany. The former Nazi capital of Berlin, located in East Germany, was also divided. The Western powers got West Berlin, the Soviets got East Berlin. After the war, the Western powers sent a lot of money and equipment to West Berlin, and it prospered. West Berlin turned into a rich island city inside East Germany. But the rest of communist East Germany was poor, and its people had harder lives than their West German neighbors. Frustrated, millions of East Germans defected to West Berlin in search of a better life. To stop these defections, where people leave one country to live in another, East Germany made traveling to the West illegal. And they built the Berlin Wall in August 1961 to keep the rest of the East Germans from leaving. Their city had been cut in two. In the early days, there were still a few weak points in the wall.
East Berliners who have apartments facing the border take the long chance when they get orders to leave their homes for the interior. While an East German guard attempts to yank her back to prison, West Berliners pull her to a fire net and freedom.
The East Germans soon blocked and demolished homes and buildings along the border. The East and West built up troops on opposite sides of the wall, and it became one of the front lines in the Cold War between the capitalist democracies of the West and the communist countries of the Eastern Bloc. The wall stood for the next 30 years. Thousands of East Germans managed to get past the wall over that time. But thousands were also caught and imprisoned. And hundreds were killed trying to escape East Germany. The wall finally came down in 1989. East Germany's Communist Party was thrown out of power following months of anti-government protests. Since the wall came down, Germany has tried to bring Eastern productivity and wages up to Western standards. There are still many things dividing the East and West German people, differences in lifestyle, in wealth, and political beliefs. But now that the Berlin Wall is gone, one of the biggest obstacles dividing them is gone too. And a reunited city of Berlin is once again the capital of a reunited Germany.
The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is located on the British Isles off the northwest coast of France. The UK is part of the European Union and is made up of the island of Great Britain, which includes England, Wales, and Scotland, and the northern 1/6 of the island of Ireland.
The capital city of Great Britain is London, England. London is the largest city in the entire UK. Today, London is a sprawling metropolis with about 6.5 million people. But London has been a big city for centuries. 200 years ago, there were already over 1 million people living here. To heat their homes and fuel their factories, they burned coal. This burning coal released tons of ash, soot, and sulfur into the air. The smoke from the coal mixed with London's natural fog and created a thick gray smog that could hang over the city for days. Locals called it London fog. The smog even made its way into the literature of the day. In his 1853 novel Bleak House, Charles Dickens wrote about an unhealthy fog he called a London particular, or characteristic of London. The London fog could get so bad that it actually killed people. In 1952, a 4-day smog killed over 4,000 Londoners. In part to get away from the smog, and with the introduction of affordable mass transit, many people moved to the outskirts of London. But as more people moved to the city's edge, it turned into a huge suburb, the residential area around a city. For the English, the country estate was their dream home. But most people couldn't afford to buy manor houses in the countryside, so they moved to the ever-expanding suburbs. Although the builders used efficient, modern materials like concrete, they built the houses based on designs from periods that were high points in English history. The Tudor style of the mid-16th century featured houses that combined bricks with timber. Their triangular roofs, bay windows, and great halls were like those in traditional manor houses. The Elizabethan style of the late 16th century added more living areas, wider staircases, and bigger bedrooms, all meant to emphasize comfort. And the Queen Anne Revival style of the late 19th century emphasized protection with its steep roofs and towers. And its tall chimneys, originally meant to stop sparks from setting fire to thatched roofs, expressed warmth and safety. These traditional styles reassured the suburban residents and were reminders of England's glory days. Some even claim that they helped people feel more secure during the Great Depression and the World Wars. The coal fogs that plagued London for hundreds of years are now a thing of the past. But for many people, the desire to escape the city into the suburbs is still going strong. Around the 8th century BC, the Peloponnesus region in southern Greece was invaded by soldiers from the north. These invaders established a new city, Sparta, and their neighbors soon came to fear them. Sparta's warriors were so fierce, the city didn't need walls for protection. Other nations wanted Peloponnesus, a fertile valley sheltered by mountains. The threat of invasion from the Persian Empire and others was constant. Forever under the cloud of war, Sparta was an armed camp. Soldiers were the ruling class. At birth, a boy's strength and health were assessed. Those deemed weak were abandoned in the mountains. Those judged fit were taken from their mothers at age 7 to begin military training. At 20, he was made a soldier and joined a platoon. At 30, he could marry as long as he remained devoted to affairs of state and the art of war. He could not farm or trade. These jobs were left to the slave class, known as helots, and lesser citizens, called freemen. At 60, a soldier finally retired, and a younger man took his place in the platoon. Sparta's single-minded devotion to war produced an army that could out-drill, out-march, and out-fight anyone. By the 6th century BC, Sparta was the dominant city in Greece on the strength of its brute force alone. Spartans fought in small, mobile platoons of fewer than 24 men. In battle, a Spartan warrior armored his torso with a bronze breastplate called a cuirass. His shins were also guarded by bronze. Strapped to his chest was an iron sword with a curved blade. A crested bronze helmet that exposed only his eyes protected his head. As an army, the Spartans used a new fighting strategy called a phalanx. Their phalanx was a massive formation of soldiers protected with shields. The right side of each man was protected by the shield of the man to his left. Sparta produced soldiers who could endure any hardship and confront death without fear. The term Spartan became synonymous with self-discipline and self-restraint. But centuries of fighting took their toll on Sparta. Costly wars with Persia, Athens, and Thebes eventually weakened the city. In the 4th century BC, Philip II of Macedon, father to Alexander the Great, conquered the region as part of his campaign to become master of Greece. By the 2nd century BC, Sparta was nothing more than a Roman province.
Italy is on a boot-shaped peninsula in southern Europe along the Mediterranean Sea. It's bordered by France, Slovenia, Austria, and Switzerland, and the Ligurian, Tyrrhenian, Ionian, and Adriatic Seas. Italy also surrounds the independent state of Vatican City and the tiny republic of San Marino. The city of Rome is in the middle of Italy. Rome is Italy's capital and its largest city. Rome is an ancient city and one of the great symbols of European civilization. From its humble beginnings as a collection of farms along the banks of the Tiber River, the city of Rome grew into one of the world's greatest empires. Rome's golden age was over 2,000 years ago. In 27 BC, Augustus Caesar, the nephew of Julius Caesar, came to power and brought with him the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. The Pax Romana was a 200-year period where Rome wasn't at war with anyone. The Roman Empire thrived during this time and grew as large as it would ever be. It covered an area stretching from modern-day Scotland all the way to modern-day Syria and Armenia. Roman legions protected trade routes on newly built roads, and the Roman fleet ruled the seas. Grain, gold, exotic animals, and other riches flooded into Rome from the foreign lands it had conquered, and Roman citizens moved freely throughout the empire, spreading the Latin language, a common Roman coinage, and their Roman architecture and culture. Ancient Rome was a city of over 1 million people. That number of people living in one place was unheard of at that time. Roman technology helped the city grow that large. An ingenious system of aqueducts brought fresh water to Rome's people. And a complex sanitation system kept the streets clean and limited the spread of disease, a serious problem in other cities back then. They even had police and fire brigades patrolling the streets. The Romans enjoyed a busy cultural life. Temples, theaters, baths, roads, and public spaces spread throughout the empire. But one of the most important places for the average Roman was the arena. And the greatest one was the Colosseum. To keep the people happy, the emperor held spectacular contests there. Some of the contests were battles between gladiators, who were usually trained slaves or prisoners. Other events had men fighting against wild animals shipped to Rome from throughout the empire. The arena could be flooded for sea battles. The games reflected the ideals of the Roman people. The gladiators displayed Roman courage and military strength. The exotic animals showed how far the empire reached. The games proved that Rome and the emperor controlled not only the lives of people, but nature itself. When Rome finally fell to the Goths in AD 476, it took over 1,200 years for another society to reach the level of technical sophistication and luxury of the Romans. Final proof, perhaps, of Rome's ultimate success.
The Kingdom of Sweden is located in northern Europe on the eastern part of the Scandinavian peninsula. Sweden borders Norway, Finland, the Gulf of Bothnia, and the Baltic Sea, and is slightly larger than California. 2/3 of Sweden's land is mountainous. Because of this, most of Sweden's nearly 9 million people live in the low-lying southern third of the country. Stockholm is the largest city in Sweden. It's also the home of the national government. Although Sweden was a military power during the 17th century, it hasn't participated in a war in almost 200 years. This long period of peace has allowed Sweden to spend less on its military and more on helping the country and its people prosper. Sweden has developed a high-tech capitalist system that provides extensive welfare benefits to its people. As a result, Sweden has one of the highest standards of living in the world. But these benefits don't come cheaply. The government collects high taxes from its people and industries to pay for them. One of the industries that gives the Swedish government some of this much-needed tax money is forestry. About 65% of Sweden is covered by forest. It has so much wood that the timber industry can supply all of Sweden's needs and have enough left over to make forestry products one of Sweden's top exports. Because the country has been so stable and successful for so long, it hasn't needed to overexploit its natural resources to earn money. Unlike many other timber-producing countries, Sweden works hard to make sure its logging industry cuts down trees responsibly. Even 100 years ago, the government passed strict rules to make sure that too much of the forest was not cut down. Today, the forestry industry actually plants more trees than it cuts down. The Swedes see their forests as much more than a way to earn money. Sweden was the first country in all of Europe to create a national parks system back in 1909. The Swedes celebrate many nature-related festivals and holidays. And they participate in outdoor sports and activities all year round. The government even created a national hiking fitness test back in the 1930s. By the 1970s, hiking was so popular that more than 3 million Swedes had passed this voluntary timed test, just for the fun of it. The natural environment has always been important to the Swedish way of life. And the Swedes are trying to make sure they'll be able to keep it that way for generations to come.
Oracles were priestesses believed to communicate the wishes of the Greek gods. The Acropolis became a showcase of colossal gilded buildings and huge bronze and marble statues. Now in ruins, the grandeur of these structures is still awe-inspiring. At the top of the Acropolis is the Parthenon. Completed in 432 BC, it is the largest Doric temple in Greece. Except for its wooden roof, it was built entirely of marble. Dedicated to the goddess Athena, the Parthenon housed a giant statue of her. The United Kingdom, Ireland, and Iceland are also Western European countries, even though they are separate from the peninsula's landmass. Greece is also part of Western Europe, even though it lies at the tip of the Balkan Peninsula. Greece has more than 2,000 islands, and it's bordered by the Ionian Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Aegean Sea. Its capital city is Athens. Athens is considered the birthplace of Western civilization. Standing watch over Athens is the Acropolis. Pericles, a statesman in ancient Athens, was instructed by an oracle to transform the Acropolis into a city of temples. Belgium is bordered by Luxembourg to the southeast and France to the west and southwest. Belgium is one of the smallest countries in Europe, just about the size of the state of Maryland. Once part of the Netherlands, Belgium won its independence in 1830. Now it is one of Europe's most urbanized and densely populated nations. Belgium is home to over 10 million people who speak primarily Dutch and French. Twice the area of New Jersey, the Netherlands has 280 miles of coastline. This coastal expanse and its major rivers, including the Rhine, encouraged international trade and exploration throughout Dutch history. The city of Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands. In addition to being a major port and a center of Most of Western Europe is a peninsula surrounded by the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans, the North Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. The Western European peninsula is composed of the countries Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Liechtenstein, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Though the contributions of ancient Greece are well known, Athens remains on the world stage. As the capital of Greece and a center of Western European culture, Athens hosted the 2004 Olympic Games. The Netherlands, also known as Holland, is located in northwestern Europe. It is bordered by the North Sea to the north and west, Germany to the east, and Belgium to the south. The 16 million people who live in the Netherlands speak Dutch and Frisian.